So I've just come down to Cornwall with the family and the dogs. The dogs are here actually. Say hello, dogs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They're all there. Just making sure. But I wanted to do a video today, kind of like asking about this current trend with modelers, which I've done a video or two on, where I'm kind of seeing, and I guess other people have noticed this as well, but the flagship modelers are getting less attention. And you know, we've been on the Helix for 10 years nearly. We've been on the NANOCORTEX now since, you know, like 2020. And instead of focusing on bringing out newer flagship modelers, which I think would need to be very expensive now, right? They're bringing out like the NANOCORTEX, the TONEX one, these smaller units. And I kind of was asking the question, like, who are these actually for?
This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
If you ever wondered what happened to Fenton's son, this is Chippy now. So I did have a chat with Rob Harris from Jamiroquai about the NANOCORTEX, who's just got one, and you can check on his Instagram. And we were talking about, like, could this thing reasonably work for him? And you know, what this thing can do is load 4 presets at a time and switch them from here. I think via MIDI you get access to far more, but you'll probably know from around the launch that this is like 7 simultaneous blocks. So you've got a noise gate, which is kind of functional. Then you've got capture, you've got pitch, you want to pitch things down or up, which is based on the transpose algorithm, which people have varying opinions on, but for me I've compared it to like Digitech and the 96 Poly Capo, which was made by the Digitech team, and I think it's actually kind of way less good in terms of glitchiness, but it is actually quick latency wise and feel wise, so that's kind of a trade-off there. And then you've got the actual amp capture and an IR block. Then you've got a chorus, which is based on the Boss Dimension, and then you've got an analog delay, which is really flexible, and the Mindful Reverb, which is again really flexible. So if you're a total effects junkie, like I saw the bassist from In Living Colour was doing a playthrough of his rig the other day, I thought, well, that's a really bonkers rig, then you're probably not going to be able to get by with this, but I'll show you now how I've got it set up, which I think could get me through a function gig. I have used it with my normal pedal board for a function gig, and that is again who I think can benefit from this. It doesn't have an effects loop, as you will already know. I think it's actually quite impressive what you can do with something this size. So, as you probably already know, you've basically got 4 presets here. So they kind of spill over in, if it's yellow to yellow. Shut up, dogs. Shut up. You can get spillover, so it's not just straightforwardly switching between 4 presets and then having things die out. So it is really quite powerful. So I've got a clean here, which is based on my Pro Reverb. Then I've got a capture of the Universal Audio Enigmatic. Okay, then over here I've got another enigmatic lead capture. And then here I've got my Eric lead. And what is the expression pedal doing here, you ask? Well, you could do a bunch of things with this, but here I've got it just set up to do my delay and reverb mix. And obviously it's not doing anything right now. So on each preset, thing that you could do with this is you can assign a bunch of things. So you could have a boost / volume with this as well. So for instance, I could have my preset here be like a rhythm tone, then go all the way down, and that'll bring up my delay mix, and I could increase mids, or I could increase the drive, increase the level. So actually with the NANOCORTEX and the Boss EV30, I'm getting to the stage where actually I could do all that I personally need to do for a gig. We've of course also got a bit of chorus in here at the moment, but you know, reasonably I could get through a function gig, and I have done with the NANOCORTEX and an EV30. Would that work for any of you guys as well? But I'm going to guess the way that hopefully your DSP planned for it to be used would be that you put your drive pedals in front, and that you put your delay, reverb and stuff afterwards, and then probably you're plugging in or out of a DI box. I don't know if any of you guys actually use DI boxes live. I don't, but I'm guessing that'd be like the optimal way to do it. Rob Harris uses a quad cortex live, and he uses like one capture divided by 13, and then I think like me here with the expression pedal, he was talking about setting it up so that controls the delay reverb mix. And then the other thing is that he's got a Nobel's ODR clone, which is the Vemoram Shanks ODS1. And so I think the reality is, for like a touring guitarist, or some of us guys that do like function keys and stuff, some of the benefit of these things is like having good tone in a simple rig that is small, I think is good. I don't know for you guys at home, and for me, like in this circumstance, it's really nice to be able to pack this and stick it in the car with the family, and this can do audio interface stuff as well, which is really handy. It's got a headphone output. So there's a real benefit there, I think. You think of also like the TONEX 1, like something that small that can do basically an all-in-one rig. Now this lacks the kind of switching ability of the NANOCORTEX and the expression pedal thing. So I think that, you know, reasonably this is quite a bit more expensive, but still under £500. I think this is just over £100, right? But you know, no expression pedal with that. So I think in terms of actually gigging this thing, I'd struggle, whereas I literally could and have just gigged this thing. At the same time, I feel like we're giving up quite a lot versus a flagship modeler. So you know, 2 switches, and then like say the Boss GX10, there's 3 switches. The FM3, there's 3 switches. The HX Stomp, there's 3 switches. And for me, live, I don't feel like it's quite enough to really get sort of the most out of the piece of gear. It's just my general feeling with this. When I had the HX Stomp XL, that has 4 snapshots and a bunch of more switches. I felt like that had like an optimal amount there, where it's like, right, I've got my 3 switches for snapshots, and I've got a drive switch, if I want an extra bit of drive, or a delay switch. I think that was kind of the sweet spot, whereas I think 2, 3 switches for the live gigging musician, I think is maybe a little bit underpowered. Well, not underpowered, but you're not getting the best out of the power of these things. It's just my opinion on that. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments, if you reckon. Equally, you know, like the Line 6 Helix, when I've gigged that live with the scribble strips and the FM9 I've been gigging recently, those are bigger units and maybe a little bit too big for fly rigs for some folks. I know Matteo Mancuso specifically chose the FM9 for a specific tour over the Helix, because the Helix was too large to travel with and the FM9 was just that bit smaller. But my mate David Beebe talks about the FM3 being like a bit too big to consider for like a fly or travel rig, because that maybe weighs a bit too much. The Quad Cortex, again, I think is like the most powerful smaller unit. I think that would be probably a sweet spot, and is really quite small enough that I think, you know, it's smaller than a laptop. I don't think we necessarily need to keep going smaller and smaller and smaller. I like the idea of having a cheaper version that isn't as fully powered as the flagship, but also I'd like some sort of mid options, I guess, like the HX Stomp XL, where it's kind of, you know, like an FM6 or something like that, where it's kind of going between the pared down experience and the full experience. That actually would probably be like a sweet spot for a lot of people. Like, I don't need all of the switches of a Helix, but I quite like the Stribble scripts. I quite like that experience in general. If I could have like a Helix with 6 switches instead of 12 or whatever it is, that might be a thing for me. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.